The Galactic Academy accepted 47 species and made one fatal mistake. They assumed the human student was the weakest creature in the room. Nobody warns you about humans when you enroll at the Galactic Academy of Advanced Studies. They really should. My name is Kelrith, and I am a Valorian, which means I have 4 eyes, exceptional hearing, and apparently terrible judgment about which species to underestimate. I had been attending the Academy for 3 standard cycles when the incident occurred. The incident that would fundamentally reshape how every species in this institution viewed those soft pink creatures from that waterlogged ball of chaos they call Earth. The Academy prided itself on being the pinnacle of civilized education. 47 species, all gathered under one massive biodome on the neutral moon of Axios Prime, learning together in harmony and mutual respect. Or so the brochures claimed. Reality, as it turns out, was considerably messier, meaner, and about to get significantly more violent. It was 3rd rotation, just after the quantum mechanics lecture. I was heading toward the refectory when I heard voices echoing from corridor 12B. Now, 12B was one of those maintenance corridors that students were not technically supposed to use, but everyone did because it shaved 4 minutes off the walk between the science wing and the dormitories. The lighting was dim, the air recyclers hummed too loudly, and it was the perfect place for the kind of conversation you did not want overheard. I should have kept walking. I really should have. Instead, I slowed down, my curiosity getting the better of my common sense. What I saw made my dorsal fins flatten against my spine. 3 figures had cornered a 4th against the wall. I recognized them immediately. Vex, Thrum, and Cora, the self-appointed elite of our year group. Vex was a Saurian, all scales and muscle, standing nearly 3 meters tall with teeth that could punch through reinforced steel. His family controlled half the mining operations in the Kepler sector, and he never let anyone forget it. Thrum was a Xiphus, an insectoid species with 4 arms, compound eyes, and a chitinous exoskeleton that could deflect small arms fire. His kind were known for their military prowess and complete lack of humor. Cora was perhaps the most unsettling, a crystalline from the Prism Nebula, her body composed of living silicate that could shift and reshape at will, sharp as broken glass when she wanted to be. And there, backed against the wall with her arms crossed and her expression utterly unimpressed, was Kira Chen. Human. 1st year. 17 standard years old, which I had learned was barely adult by her species reckoning. She stood maybe 1.6 meters tall, with dark hair pulled back in what humans called a ponytail, wearing the standard academy jumpsuit that somehow looked more rumpled on her than anyone else. She had brown eyes that were currently locked on Vex with the kind of bored patience usually reserved for listening to Professor Heimlock drone on about subspace dimensional theory. I am just saying. Vex was hissing, leaning down so his snout was level with Kira's face. That it is adorable, your species thinks it belongs here. You barely discovered faster than light travel 20 cycles ago. My people were building stargates when yours were still figuring out how to make fire. Noted, Kira said flatly. Her voice carried that peculiar Earth accent, the one from the region they called North America. Can I go now? I have a chemistry assignment due. Thrum clicked his mandibles in what I had learned was Xiphus laughter. Chemistry. How quaint. Your planet is still using combustion engines for ground transport. Primitive does not even begin to cover it. Cora chimed in, her crystalline voice tinkling like shattering glass. I heard humans still eat dead organic matter. They actually kill other creatures and consume their flesh. Barbaric. Kira's jaw tightened slightly. It was the first real reaction I had seen from her. Yeah, well, I heard crystallines absorb radiation for nutrients, but you don't see me giving you grief about your glow-in-the-dark diet. Wrong thing to say. Vex's tail lashed against the wall with a metallic clang. You watch your tone, pink skin. You are in the most prestigious academy in 11 sectors, surrounded by species that have forgotten more about civilization than your kind will ever know. Show some respect. I was showing respect, Kira replied, her voice still eerily calm. Right up until you 3 decided to corner me in a maintenance corridor to stroke your egos. So here is an idea. Move, and we can all pretend this never happened. The Academy loved to talk about being a safe space. They loved their diversity seminars and their conflict resolution workshops. They had 17 different meditation rooms, 43 registered student wellness groups, and a counseling center staffed with empaths from 6 different species, all designed to ensure that every student felt protected, valued, and heard. None of which meant a damn thing when you were cornered by 3 individuals who had spent their entire lives being told they were superior. Throom moved first, his 4 arms spreading wide to block any escape route. "You do not give us orders, human. Perhaps someone needs to teach you about the hierarchy here." "Pretty sure the hierarchy does not include assault in darkened hallways," Kira said. She still had not moved from her position against the wall, but I noticed something then. Something subtle. Her weight had shifted slightly onto the balls of her feet. Her shoulders, while appearing relaxed, had changed their angle by perhaps 2 degrees. I had seen combat stances before. Every species had them. This did not look like any combat stance I recognized. "Assault," Vex laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest like thunder. "We are simply having a conversation. No one is assaulting anyone. Yet." "Right," Kira said. "Conversation, is that what we are calling it?" She looked directly at Vex, and I swear on my ancestors, there was something in her eyes that should have warned him. Something old and primal and absolutely devoid of fear. "Last chance. Back off." Cora's crystalline form rippled with amusement. "Or what, exactly? You will report us? Go crying to the administration. Please, your species has no pull here. No influence. You are a charity case, admitted to fill some diversity quota." "Not what I meant," Kira said quietly. Vex made his mistake then. The mistake that would cost him 3 broken ribs, a shattered jaw, and 6 weeks in the medical regeneration pod. He grabbed her. His massive clawed hand shot out and seized Kira by the front of her jumpsuit, lifting her off the ground like she weighed nothing. "Listen here, you little..." He did not finish the sentence. What happened next took approximately 2.3 seconds. I know because I checked the security footage later frame by frame, trying to understand what my eyes had witnessed. Kira's hand moved. Not in panic, not in fear. With the kind of precision that spoke of countless hours of practice. Her palm struck upward, catching Vex's elbow joint at an angle that biology should not allow. There was a sound like wet branches snapping. Vex's grip released instantly. "Ow," Kira said, hitting the ground and immediately stepping back. "Okay. I warned you," Vex roared, clutching his arm. The sound echoed through the corridor, raw and filled with pain and confusion. He had just had his arm hyperextended by a creature 1/3 his size. Throom and Cora stared. I stared. The entire universe seemed to pause for one perfect moment of collective realization. We had all made a terrible miscalculation about humans. Throom recovered first, his military training overriding his shock. All 4 arms came up in a Zephyr's fighting stance, mandibles spread wide in a threat display that had made seasoned warriors reconsider their life choices. "You just assaulted a fellow student," he clicked, his voice tight with fury. "Big mistake, human." "Self-defense," Kira corrected, backing up another step to give herself room. Her breathing had changed, slower and more controlled. "There is a difference. Walk away. Please, please." She actually said please while Vex was still howling and cradling his hyperextended arm. The politeness was somehow more unsettling than any threat would have been. Throom charged. 4 arms meant 4 attack vectors, and Zaphos' combat doctrine emphasized overwhelming force. He came at her like a chitinous battering ram, all speed and sharp edges and the confidence of someone who had never lost a physical confrontation. Kira went low. She dropped beneath his guard so fast I almost missed it, her legs sweeping out in an arc that caught Throom's leading legs. Momentum and physics did the rest. 300 kilograms of insectoid warrior flipped forward, carried by his own speed. He hit the floor face first with a crunch that made my stomach turn. But Kira was not done. She was on him before he could recover, her knee driving into the soft joint where his thorax met his abdomen. Throom's exoskeleton, so effective against blunt trauma, did nothing against the precisely applied pressure on his vulnerable articulation point. He made a sound I had never heard a Xiphos make, high-pitched and desperate. "Stay down," Kira said. Not yelled. Said, like she was asking him to pass the salt. Throom did not stay down. He twisted, one arm swinging wild. His clawed hand caught Kira across the face, raking 3 parallel lines from her temple to her jaw. Blood welled up immediately. shockingly red against her skin. She should have stumbled. Should have cried out. Should have retreated. Instead, she smiled. "Ancestors, help me." The human smiled. Blood running down her face, cornered by 3 hostile aliens, and she smiled like someone had just told her a joke.
"Okay then," she said.
What followed was not a fight. Fights imply some degree of mutual exchange, back and forth, a contest. This was a systematic dismantling. Kira's elbow came down on the back of Thrune's head, right where his neural cluster sat beneath the chitin. He went limp instantly. Not dead, I realized with a strange mix of relief and horror, but unconscious. She had known exactly where to hit him. Cora had been frozen, her crystalline form flickering between shapes, unable to process what she was witnessing. That hesitation cost her. Kira grabbed a maintenance tool from the nearby rack, a heavy polymer wrench designed for adjusting air recycler units. Crystallines were tough, nearly impossible to hurt with conventional strikes. Their bodies could redistribute impact across their entire structure, but tools change things. Kira swung the wrench like she had done it 1,000 times before, catching Cora at her base structure, the central column that supported her form. The impact sent harmonic vibrations through Cora's entire body. Her carefully maintained cohesion shattered, literally. She broke apart into hundreds of fragments, scattering across the floor in a tinkling cascade. She was not dead either. Crystallines could reform, given time, but it would take hours, and it hurt. Oh, how it hurt. The high-frequency keening sound coming from the fragments told me that much. Vex had recovered enough to try again. Through his pain, through his shock, his pride demanded he not be beaten by a human. He came at her with his good arm extended, claws out, teeth bared. Kira sidestepped like she had known exactly where he would be. Her hand shot out, fingers rigid, and struck him in the throat. Not hard enough to crush his windpipe, but hard enough to make breathing extremely difficult. Vex's eyes went wide. While he gasped, Kira drove her foot into his knee. I heard the ligaments tear from where I stood. Vex went down hard, roaring in pain and fury and disbelief. The human stood over him, breathing hard now, blood still flowing from the gashes on her face. "I asked you to walk away," she said. 3 times. I asked nicely. Then she did something that made my blood run cold. She pulled a cloth from her pocket, a simple white handkerchief, and pressed it against her bleeding face. No panic. No tears. She just applied pressure and waited, like this was routine, like bleeding was just an inconvenience. Later I would learn that humans have a pain tolerance that most species find incomprehensible, that they evolved as endurance hunters, capable of pursuing prey until the prey literally died from exhaustion, that they had something called an adrenal response that let them push through injuries that would incapacitate other species. Right then, all I knew was that Kira Chen had just taken down 3 of the Academy's most formidable students in under 15 seconds and looked mildly annoyed about the whole thing. The security alarm finally started blaring. Apparently, someone had triggered it when Vex's first roar echoed through the corridors. Heavy footsteps approached rapidly. The Academy's security team, probably expecting to find a fight in progress. What they found was 3 elite students in various states of broken, and 1 small human holding a bloody handkerchief to her face, looking tired. "Hey," Kira said when the first security officer rounded the corner. "Before you ask, they started it." The security team consisted of 4 officers, 2 Valorians like myself, 1 hulking Gorath and a Methyloid, whose gaseous form rippled with confusion as they took in the scene. To their credit, they did not immediately stun Kira and drag her away. The sheer improbability of what they were seeing seemed to short-circuit their standard protocols. Officer Brent, the Gorath, whose species was renowned for their investigative thoroughness, simply stared for a long moment before activating his comm unit. "We need medical to Corridor 12B. Multiple casualties, and, get Administrator Velkis down here. Immediately." Casualties, plural, caused by 1 human teenager who was now sitting against the wall, still holding pressure on her face wound, looking like she was waiting for a transit shuttle. The medical team arrived within minutes, their anti-grav stretchers hovering behind them. The lead physician, a Centaurian named Hux, took 1 look at Vex and immediately started barking orders. "Get him stabilized. That knee needs immediate reconstruction." Throom needs a neural scan, and someone start collecting Cora's fragments before we lose any. Then Hawks noticed Kira. You. Let me see that wound. It is just a scratch, Kira said, pulling the handkerchief away. The bleeding had already slowed significantly. Hawks's 3 eyes widened. Those are lacerations 4 centimeters deep. You should be in shock. Should I? Kira asked, genuinely curious. Administrator Velkis arrived like a storm system, her flowing robes billowing behind her. She was a luminari, a species that literally glowed when agitated. Right now, she was bright enough to read by. Someone explained to me why I have 3 students en route to medical and 1 human sitting in a maintenance corridor covered in blood. The security footage told the story. We watched it 17 times in the administrator's office while Kira sat in a chair, her face now properly bandaged, looking supremely unbothered. Each viewing made it worse. She broke Vex's arm in 1 strike, Velkas said, her glow flickering with distress. 1 strike. He outweighs her by 200 kilograms. Leverage, Kira offered helpfully. And knowing where the joint bends, basic physics. Really, Security Chief Mordak, a grizzled veteran of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force, paused the footage at the moment. Kira's knee connected with Thruum's articulation point. This is military training. Trained fighters know those weak points. Where did you learn this? Earth, Kira said simply. I took classes. Classes, Velkis repeated faintly. What kind of classes teach 17-year-olds to disable armored combatants? Krav Maga, mostly. Some jujitsu. Little bit of Muay Thai. Dad thought it was important. I know how to defend myself, Kira shrugged. Turns out he was right. The medical reports arrived 3 hours into the investigation. I was still there, having been called as a witness. I read over Velkis's shoulder, and each line made the situation more surreal. Vex. Hyperextended elbow, 3 fractured ribs, torn knee ligaments, fractured jaw, severe concussion, recovery time, 6 weeks minimum. Thruum, compressed neural cluster, fractured mandible, cracked thorax plating, minor internal hemorrhaging. Recovery time, 4 weeks minimum. Cora, complete structural dispersal, harmonic trauma across all fragments. Recovery time, 8 to 12 weeks for full reconstitution. These are combat casualties, Mordak said quietly. I have seen soldiers injured less severely in actual war zones. Someone had pulled Kira's admission file. Someone else had started pulling information about Earth. What we found changed everything. Earth. Gravity 1.0 standard, which sounded normal until you realized most species evolved on worlds with 0.7 to 0.8 gravity. Atmospheric pressure, 1.0 atmospheres at sea level, significantly higher than 73% of civilized worlds. Oxygen concentration, 21%, enough to be mildly toxic to 16 species in the Academy. But it was the ecological data that truly shocked us. Earth had been classified as a Class 9 death world. Not the worst in the galaxy, but firmly in the category of planets that most species would consider actively hostile to life. Apex predators on every continent. Megafauna that could crush vehicles. Weather patterns that regularly killed thousands. Diseases that evolved almost as fast as they could be cured. Tectonic activity that reshaped entire regions without warning. And humans who sat at the top of that nightmare's food chain through nothing but stubbornness, intelligence, and apparently the ability to run things to death. Endurance predators. Velkis read from the report, her glow dimming to a sickly yellow. Humans evolved to chase prey animals across vast distances until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They have redundant organ systems, healing factors that work in real time, adrenaline responses that allow them to temporarily ignore pain and increase strength. They can survive injuries that would kill most species through sheer biological tenacity. She looked at Kira. Why did your admission file not include this information? Because no one asked, Kira said. I mean, I filled out all the forms. Not my fault if you all assumed we were fragile. The disciplinary hearing was convened 48 hours later in the Grand Assembly Hall, a space usually reserved for graduation ceremonies and visiting dignitaries. The committee consisted of 7 members representing different species and departments, seated behind a curved bench that made them look appropriately imposing. Vex, Thruum and Cora sat on one side, various parts of them still wrapped in medical regeneration fields. Their families sat behind them, a collection of wealth, power, and barely contained fury. Kira sat alone on the other side. She had refused legal representation, stating that she did not need a lawyer to explain self-defense. The bandage on her face had been reduced to 3 small dermal patches. Committee Chair Torvin, the ancient Meladran whose tentacles twitched with barely suppressed anxiety, opened the proceedings. We are here to address the incident of third rotation, Corridor 12B, wherein student Kira Chen of Earth caused significant physical harm to 3 fellow students. Miss Chen, you stand accused of assault, excessive use of force, and conduct unbecoming of an academy student. How do you plead? Not guilty, Kira said clearly. Self-defense is not assault. Vex's father, a massive Saurian, whose scales were decorated with mining corporation insignias, rose from his seat. Self-defense. My son has 3 broken ribs and will walk with a reconstructed knee for the rest of his life. That creature hospitalized 3 students. 3. She is a menace and should be expelled immediately, if not prosecuted under galactic law. Sit down, please. Counselor Rexith, Torvin said wearily. You will have your chance to speak. The committee reviewed the security footage again. This time, with the benefit of slowed playback and expert analysis, a tactical instructor from the Academy's Combat Studies program had been brought in to provide commentary. Note here, Professor Calent pointed with a laser stylus. The human maintains situational awareness of all 3 opponents simultaneously. When Thruum charges, she is already calculating trajectory, velocity, and optimal counter position. This is not instinct. This is training. She is 17 years old, committee member Draxus said, her insectoid features unrateable. 17. Where does a child learn to fight like this? Earth, Kira said. We already covered this. You want me to explain again? Torvin's tentacles rippled in what I had learned was Meladran frustration. Miss Chen, please help us understand. Your planet achieved spaceflight barely 25 standard years ago. You have no interstellar conflicts, no galactic enemies. Why does your species train children in combat? Kira was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was softer but somehow more terrible. Because humans hurt humans. We do not need alien enemies. We have spent our entire history fighting each other. Every culture on Earth developed martial arts, fighting systems, ways to kill efficiently. Some of them are thousands of years old. We teach them to kids, because the world is dangerous, and sometimes the danger looks like another person. The silence in the hall was absolute. So yes, Kira continued. I know how to fight. My father taught me because he wanted me to be safe, because he grew up in a place where girls got hurt, and he decided his daughter would not be helpless. That is not aggression. That is love. Cora's mother, a shimmering crystalline elder, whose form was etched with family lineage patterns, spoke up. Her voice chimed with aristocratic disdain. Love does not excuse violence. My daughter will require months to fully reconstitute, months of pain and rehabilitation because this human refused to simply accept her place. My place? Kira's voice went cold. Which was what exactly? Pinned against a wall while your daughter and her friends mocked my entire species. Let me ask you something. If your daughter was cornered by 3 larger, stronger beings who grabbed her, what would you want her to do? Submit, beg, or fight back? The crystalline elder's form flickered, but she said nothing. Professor Calent brought up another file on the display. I took the liberty of researching human military training protocols. What I found is disturbing. Their soldiers undergo conditioning that would be considered torture by galactic standards: sleep deprivation, stress positions, exposure to extreme temperatures. They train to fight through injuries, to keep functioning with broken bones and bleeding wounds, and this is considered normal for them. It is called boot camp, Kira said. And I never went through it because I am not a soldier. I just took some self-defense classes at a gym that smelled like sweat and had inspirational posters on the wall. You are making this sound way more dramatic than it was. Thruum finally spoke, his voice still distorted from his healing mandible. She knew exactly where to hit me. The neural cluster location is not common knowledge. Even trained Zephylos fighters protect that point specifically because it is so vulnerable. She targeted it immediately. I read, Kira said simply. The Academy Library has extensive anatomical databases for every species enrolled. I studied them. Not to hurt anyone, but because I was curious. If that is a crime, then fine. I am guilty. Thorvin's tentacles went still. You studied the anatomy of your fellow students. Of course I did. I study everything. That is why I am here, is it not? To learn. Vex's father stood again. This proves premeditation. She researched how to hurt our children, then executed that plan when the opportunity arose. This was calculated violence. Actually, Security Chief Mordak interjected, entering the hall with a datapad. Our investigation shows this was the 7th time Vex, Thruum, and Cora cornered Miss Chen in various locations. Each previous incident was verbal only. Miss Chen filed 2 formal complaints which were dismissed as minor disagreements. She exercised restraint 6 times before defending herself physically. The committee members looked at each other. Several appeared uncomfortable. Torvin reviewed the datapad, his tentacles coiling tighter with each page. Finally, he looked up at Vex, Thruum, and Cora. You 3 cornered a fellow student 7 times. You ignored her complaints. You escalated to physical contact despite her repeated warnings. And when she defended herself using precisely the amount of force necessary to stop the threat, you expected this committee to punish her for your mistakes. The verdict came swiftly after that. Vex, Thruum, and Cora were suspended for 1 full term. Mandatory counseling, community service, formal apologies not just to Kira but to the entire student body for bringing dishonor to the academy. Kira received a warning for fighting on academy grounds but no further punishment. Self-defense was, after all, a recognized right under galactic law. The families left in fury, making threats about withdrawing funding and political pressure. Torvin told them the door was available if they wished to use it, but the real changes came in the weeks that followed. The academy implemented new protocols. Human students were given orange identification badges, not as a mark of shame, but as a warning. A simple notice that read, Death World Species. Approach with caution and respect. Mandatory seminars were scheduled. Every student, regardless of year or species, had to attend a 3-hour presentation about Earth. About its gravity, its atmosphere, its predators, its history of warfare, about the beings that had clawed their way to the top of that nightmare through sheer bloody-minded persistence. I attended one. Watched my fellow students' faces go from boredom to disbelief to horror, as the instructor explained that humans had literally weaponized diseases, that they had split atoms to create bombs, that they had looked at the vacuum of space and decided to go there in tin cans, held together with mathematics and hope. The look students gave humans in the hallways changed. No more condescending smiles. No more dismissive comments about primitive species. Now there was respect. And yes, if I am being honest, fear. I saw Kira a week after the hearing, sitting in the refectory with her chemistry textbook. She had a tray of food that would have been toxic to half the species present, casually eating while solving equations. A group of students gave her table a wide berth. She looked up, caught my eye and smiled. Just a normal, friendly smile. I nodded back and kept walking. The warning spread through the academy faster than any official memo could have managed. Whispered in dormitories, shared over meals, passed between species who suddenly realized they had been making assumptions based on appearance rather than evidence. Do not corner the humans. Do not touch the humans without permission. Do not assume soft means weak. I see Kira regularly now. She helps me with organic chemistry, explaining molecular bonds with the same patience she probably used before breaking Vex's arm. She laughs at jokes, complains about assignment deadlines, argues about physics theories with genuine enthusiasm. She is just a student. A kid. Really. Trying to get her education far from home. But I have seen the footage. I know what she is capable of when pushed. We all do now. Last week, a new student, some aristocrat's son from the Denab system, made a sneering comment about human intelligence within Kira's earshot. 3 of his friends immediately pulled him aside and explained, in urgent whispers, why that was a catastrophically bad idea. He apologized profusely. Kira just shrugged and went back to her reading. Fragile humans, the galaxy called them. Soft little creatures from a backwater planet. Turns out, we were right about the soft part. We were just wrong about what it meant. True strength is not shown by bullying the weak, but by knowing when to walk away and when to stand your ground. Respect, preparation, and self-control are what turn survival into victory.